Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we are dealing with the first part of the 6th chapter, dealing with samatha and vipassana, which has 18 questions. We have finished the 12th question, explaining that there is actually 2 ways of practicing shamatha and vipassana. One is based on the understanding and acquaintance with the scriptures, that is called the practicing according to the Dharma. Dharma here also can mean investigating or understanding the ultimate reality, be it nirvana or be it suchness. The other is not in accordance with the Dharma, it is in accordance with the faith in the instructions of the teacher, instruction of the Nirdeshaka, the Guru, and this is, we have to understand very clearly. In this tradition, it means meditating on the aggregates, meditating on any object which you can grasp in a deeper sense, meditating in an analytical way on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, meditating on the base of the analytical mind. And we have to understand in this tradition, the analytical mind only analyzes the relative reality, the samvrti. So even the aggregates, the spheres, inner and outer spheres, the elements, all of these are actually what we have described as conceptual images. So the guru or the teacher explains the conceptual images, and the disciple has faith in these images that they really represent the reality. We have to understand in different traditions of explaining the agamas, these conceptual images, the enumeration of the different cetasikas and rupas, they are different. And also the classification of the meditation object, they are different. So you can have in an analytical way of analyzing, you can have a different approaches. So it shows that they are representing a relative reality, not the highest reality. So according to this explanation, in the non-dualistic tradition, the one who uses the analytical approach is the one of not the very Tikshnendriya, very sharp faculties, but since he relies on the explanation of the Guru and practices according to the explanation of the Guru, not according to his insight into the highest reality or direct realization of the highest reality. So he is, so to say, of the lower kind of understanding. The higher kind of understanding is based on the highest reality. This we should keep in mind. Then the next question is in a way continuing the previous analysis. And this question is, Maitreya also asked the Buddha, you speak of shamatha and vipassana focused on different principles. The different principles, to make it clear, here signifies actually the Vishesha Dharmas, when we would translate into Sanskrit. The Vishesha Dharmas means the special, we have spoken before at the beginning of this chapter, we have mention of the 12 divisions of the Tripitaka, the Sutra, Geya, the Itivutaka, Udana, and so on, Nidana. So what is probably meant that one is dealing with a particular section or a particular sutra to practice the shamatha and vipassana. The other way is the shamatha and vipassana focused on, he translates all principles as a whole. What is actually meant is the Samanya Dharma. Samanya Dharma here, we can definitely think that this is actually explaining the suchness, the non-dualistic approach. So you have the either you meditate on the different characteristics of the reality explained in the scriptures, or you meditate on shamatha vipassana on the reality as a whole, which in this non-dualistic tradition actually means meditating on suchness. Now, let us see what the Buddha replies. The Buddha said, if enlightening beings focus on the principles of particular scriptures that we have explained, of these 12 divisions of scriptures which we have explained, or on any particular sutra or particular solemn saying of the Buddha and so on, and cultivate. Let me see the Chinese translation. And cultivate shamatha and vipassana based on the teaching they receive and contemplate. That is very important. Receive refers to the wisdom from hearing, and contemplate refers to the wisdom from contemplation, weighing in the mind the meaning that one has received. So basically, one practices shamatha and vipassana, as we have explained before, on the base of the principles that one has received and comprehended. So on the base of the Shrutamaya and Chintamaya Pragya, they are, when you meditate on them, then as we have explained, on this conceptual image, which is called in Chinese Tung Fen, it is similar to what one has received with the senses by hearing or by touching in meditation on the breath and so on. Then one meditates on that conceptual image until, as we have explained before, until one gets the subtle sensation connected with prashrabdi, with pliancy, which we have translated as relaxation and clarity. Without clarity of the object, there cannot be shamatha and vipassana. We have seen before, there can only be adaptation to shamatha and vipassana, adaptation to samadhi, or to cultivating samadhi on the conceptual image that one keeps in mind or that one analyzes according to the, as we have explained, the own and the common characteristics. So this is called the shamatha and vipassana focused on different principles. Yes, it's all right. It is more or less the same in Chinese. Would be if one take as object of one's attention, if one has a literal translation, if one takes as the object of one's attention the differences which have been established on the basis of the 12, as I have explained, 12 parts of the Tripitaka, and receives them and contemplates on them. This is called the shamatha and vipassana in regard to the vishesha dharma, in regard to different principles or different teachings, different conceptual images which one has received. So the wisdom from hearing also, one needs the conditions as explained in Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra. One also has to be concentrated to receive the teachings and to penetrate their meaning by weighing them in the mind. Unless these conditions are not there, one will not succeed in shamatha and vipassana, on the work either with the differentiated reflected image or non-differentiated reflected image. Differentiated reflected image, as we have explained, means changing the conceptual images. The non-differentiated reflected image means observing the mind which stays on the same object that we have explained before. Now, if they focus on the principles of all these scriptures, so that means Samanya Dharma, gather them into one whole. He has shortened the translation because they are more or less a synonym, but not quite the same. Why not translate in detail according to the Chinese? If one contemplate on them as one whole or one aggregate, one part, that means putting them together as being one, and one agglomerate, that means making them arise together. With such an attention, if one contemplates on them, now very important, Sui Shun Genju, approaching true suchness. He has translated. Approaching, we again and again encounter in shamatha and vipassana, is based on the three wisdoms. You cannot effectively practice shamatha and vipassana unless you use the three wisdoms, the wisdom from hearing, wisdom from contemplation, and the wisdom from meditation. Approaching refers to the wisdom from hearing. Through the wisdom of hearing, you are approaching the suchness. Unless there is no wisdom from hearing, you cannot approach the suchness. You will not understand that everything is suchness. That ultimately there is only one truth, the truth of suchness. So unless there is, as in Zen, they say, unless there is no finger pointing to the moon, you will not understand the moon. Impossible. So this is approaching true suchness. True suchness explains Genru. Gen means true, and Ru is Tata, the real Tatata. Tatata, suchness, as we have explained, is the synonym of Dharmata, Dharma, Dhatu, and so on. It has many, many synonyms. And also, very important to understand, it is a synonym of shunyata, of emptiness. So approaching true suchness means approaching emptiness being the ultimate reality. In this tradition, of course, the emptiness of the mind. Directed towards true suchness, directed toward when you approach the suchness through hearing about it, through understanding the name suchness, the concept suchness, then you can direct your mind to weigh this suchness in your mind. This is very important to understand, especially the Mahayana tradition is emphasizing the logic, the etymology. You have to understand deeply the meaning of the word, then contemplate on it, and actually grasp very clearly that except from for suchness, there cannot be any separate reality. So all these separate realities, they exist in suchness. So this is what is meant directed toward true suchness. You have a clear understanding of the suchness. As we have explained in some, especially Tibetan traditions, this logical understanding of the suchness, the dialectics, is one of the most important disciplines the monks have to study, and even lay people study, to understand to penetrate into the non-dualistic concept of Buddhism, which is not easy to understand. One can talk easily that everything is emptiness and people do that, but actually to understand it and not to be confused while differentiating the reality, to understand that we are differentiating reality in suchness, this is a different matter. For that, one needs a long training and deep understanding. In the tradition of the Dalai Lama, which he emphasizes, is the Nalanda tradition. You can actually get into the direct experience of non-dual reality through this directing one's mind towards suchness and have a clear logical understanding of the suchness, which comes from a long training in dialectics and the careful reading of the scriptures, as we have explained, reading by receiving perfectly, absorbing perfectly, memorizing. And in order to memorize, you need to develop concentration. Without concentration, you cannot memorize. And then entering into true suchness. Entering into true suchness, you can only do through the bhavana maya pragya, through the wisdom based on cultivation. Here means cultivation of samadhi. So you have these three stages: approaching, directing mind, approaching with mind to the suchness, directing your mind to suchness, and entering into suchness, means these three kinds of wisdom which enable one the abhisamaya, the direct realization of the object of liberation, be it nirvana and suchness. As we have pointed out, in this tradition, nirvana is also called suchness. Nirvana refers to that which is to be attained. When it is attained, then you have the ashraya paravriti. You enter into the process of revolution of the basis. When you enter the process of the revolution of the basis, which only is finalized or crystallized when you have attained the state of Buddhahood, either state of Buddhahood as an Arahat, state of Buddhahood as an Pratyeka Buddha, state of Buddhahood as a bodhisattva. So every Buddha, he has realized the revolution of the basis. His mind becomes pure. And this is the aim of yoga, no matter what yoga tradition we speak about. It is same in all tradition rooted in yoga. The realization of the pure mind is the aim of yoga. Same with the Samkhya Vedanta tradition, same with the Jaina tradition. As far as that point is concerned, it is the common principle of Indian yoga. So the means are different, but the aim is the same. So then, this is very interesting. Then he says also, after suchness, he says, adopting to the body, or he has explained here, approaching before he, it is a little confusing before, also approaching, okay. So approaching enlightenment, he translates the body as enlightenment. So when you get the body, you understand what is the difference between the nirvana and the body. When you speak about nirvana, it is to be attained as something which opposes samsara. When we speak of body, of enlightenment, it emphasizes attainment where the worldly realization and the supermundane realization merge together. They become one realization, no differentiation. When we speak of the revolution of the basis, actually, it's also basically refers to the removal of two obstacles, the obstacles of kleshas and the obstacle of in regard to gneya, to that which is to be known. So according to this tradition, all Buddhas, they have removed the obstacles based on kleshas, on the troubles in the mind, or we can translate as agitated sensations, kleshas. Klesh means to trouble, troubled sensation, troubled feelings. We may translate as kleshas. And the gne, this is called avarana, klesha avarana. Avarana, we may translate as obstacle. We have obstacle of the obstructed feelings, of the agitated feelings, and the obstacle of in regard to the objects of wisdom. When these two obstacles are removed, you have attained the revolution of the basis. Now, the Arahat has also attained completely the removal of the obstacle of the in regard to the abstracted emotions, but his removal of the knowledge of the object of wisdom. So this tradition, he has also removed it, but not completely. In order to remove it completely, one has to get a non-dualistic realization. So we have approaching nirvana, then approaching this ashraya paravritti, which he translates as transformation of the mental basis. Then aiming for these is translating what before was said as directed toward. And entering into these means aiming for it means based on the wisdom from contemplation, entering into these, explaining the wisdom from meditation, reflecting that all these principles bespeak countless good practices. We will come later in this chapter. It explains that the cultivation of shamatha and vipassana summarizes all kushala dharmas, summarizes all or convenient, or how to translate kushala, or good principles, all good dharmas. In this way, cultivating shamatha and vipassana, this is called shamatha and vipassana focused on the principles as a whole. That means shamatha and vipassana with the concentrated attention on the samanya dharma, translated here on the all principles as a whole. So that means based on the nirvikalpa jnana, based on the wisdom free from differentiation. This is what is meant here. Now, I see there is one thing he has not translated. These principles bespeak countless good practices. In this way, contemplating and cultivating. There are two things. He only translated cultivating. So contemplating and cultivating. Contemplating, you can take it as the meditation on these principles, and cultivating, it means in the state of samadhi. So both the penetration of the nirvikalpa jnana, of the non-differentiating wisdom, which can take as object of attention all principles as a whole, presupposes the wisdom from cultivation and also wisdom from contemplation, both wisdoms. So with this understanding, we come to the next question, 14th question. Maitreya inquired, the Buddha speak of holistic tranquility. Well, let us see what he means by holistic tranquility. The holistic tranquility, holistic shamatha and vipassana means this, as we have explained, samanya dharma. That means on the Dharma as a whole, on the Dharma in the sense of emptiness, in the same sense of suchness. That means contemplation of Dharma based on the understanding of the nirvikalpa dhyana, of the knowledge free from differentiation. So the Buddha speaks of holistic shamatha and vipassana with small focus. Okay, that literally it would mean with a small samanya dharma. Small samanya dharma. So the small dharma as a whole, which he explains later. Then observe shamatha and vipassana with a small focus, with a small understanding of samanya dharma as object, with a great focus, the great understanding of samanya dharma, of the emptiness or suchness as focus, and with infinite focus, with the infinite understanding of the suchness or emptiness as object. Focus here means as object. To what do these terms refer? And now we come to the explanation. The Buddha said, if the bodhisattvas focus or take as their object, focus their attention or have as attention, focus their attention on the doctrines of a particular scripture or treatise as one whole. So they take only one part of the scripture from these 12 divisions of the scripture, one solemn saying, one sutra, and so on, as the basis, which they have received, again, wisdom from hearing, to contemplate as one whole, the wisdom from contemplation, and meditate on them, wisdom from meditation, equally is not in Chinese, but he translates like that. Not focusing on them separately, so that means they don't make them object of a differentiating wisdom, they make them object of the non-differentiating wisdom. So they do not differentiate them as separate, but they take them as representing the whole doctrine. So then this shamatha and vipassana now we have come to the first one. If enlightening beings focus their attention on the doctrines of a particular scripture, the one scripture or treatise as one whole, so they take one particular scripture and analyze it from the point of view of suchness, from the point of view of wholeness. That is holistic shamatha and vipassana. So that means they receive this particular scripture, they contemplate on it, and they see it in the framework of the whole, in the framework of the emptiness, or in the framework of the suchness. Then it is the shamatha and vipassana with a small focus. If they focus their attention on the principle of the scriptures that they have received by the wisdom from hearing, and contemplate as one whole by wisdom of contemplation, and meditate on them, not focusing on them separately, but taking them together. That means not focusing on one particular scripture, but taking several scriptures together, trying to understand them together on the base of suchness. So this is called the shamatha and vipassana with a great focus, with a great wisdom. So that means they are not taking just one sutra as the object, they are taking many, many sutras as the object, or many, many different sayings of the Buddha as the object. So they meditate shamatha and vipassana on these, not on a particular scripture. Now the last one, if they focus their attention on the infinite teachings of the Buddha, the infinite statement of truth, the infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom, making them into one whole, and meditating on them equally, that is not there, this equally, not just on what they have received and think about, again, the wisdom from hearing and the wisdom from contemplation. This is called the shamatha and vipassana with infinite focus. Shamatha and vipassana with infinite focus. So the first one is infinite teachings. Infinite teachings refer to the infinite meanings of the teachings. So we have three aspects of infinity. Infinite teachings, here referring to infinite meaning of the teachings. The infinite statement of truth. The infinite here refers to the infinite statesman, means infinite names, as we will see later, question number 19, we will come to it. The Bodhisattva studies Dharma and studies the meaning of the Dharma. The Dharma here means, in this tradition, the names, the sentences, and the syllables, and the generalizations, and the particularization through which one explains the Dharma. So this means the statesman. Here it is translated infinite statesman of the truth. Let me see in Chinese if I can make it more clear. In Chinese, it says infinitive sentences, syllables, and the signs. That means Chinese characters or alphabetical explanation. So that means statesman. So this is a second aspect. If one understands the infinity of meanings, infinity of the means to explain the meanings, which are basically the names, and the sentences we form by the names, and the generalizations and particularization, which are based on names, and also the infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom. This is more or less the free translation. Wu liang ho ho hui suo zhao liao. So it means infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom, the infinite awareness of the wisdom that literally, that gradually follows. So in order to understand the Dharma, you have the Mula Jnana, the base wisdom, which is the object of the direct realization. And when you have a direct realization, you will have understood also the Prishta Labda Jnana, the knowledge after realization. This is very important to understand. The knowledge after realization you can make use of the conventional wisdom to explain the Dharma. First, you have to realize the Dharma. Then you can have the Prishta Labdha Jnana. You can have the knowledge after the realization to explain the Dharma and not to get stuck in names and concepts. The Sutta Nipata, for example, explains Yacha Loke Samutya Nata Upeti Muni. The one who is a wise man, who is a Muni, who has brought his mind into peace, he uses the worldly conventions. He cannot ignore them, but he does not appropriate them. Na upeti. That means he does not get stuck into them. Why? Because he has a direct realization of the truth, which is beyond the world, which is beyond the death, which is beyond defilements. So this is what is meant. It is very difficult to translate. He has done his best. He translated the infinite awareness of the ultimate wisdom. That means infinite awareness of the Mula Dhyana, of the direct knowledge of the object of realization, and of the conventional truth which explains how to get it. And which uses the different means to explain it. In this tradition, according to Bodhisattva Bhumi, Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra, he also uses logic, he uses etymology, he uses medicine, he uses Asanga was himself an expert in medicine. So this tradition, the Nagarjuna was a great medicine man, great Siddha. So he uses medicine, he uses art, like Ashwagosha, and so on, to bring the people close to the true meaning of the Dharma, which cannot be explained by words. So this is the infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom. It has the worldly aspect too. It is not only what is called Adhyatmika Jnana. It is not only the inner knowledge of liberation, but it also implies a means to explain this Adhyatmika Jnana, this inner knowledge of liberation, to others. And this is, of course, not easy. So this implies the infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom, but also this ultimate wisdom includes here the conventional reality. Making them into one whole and meditating on them equally, not just on what they have received and think about, not just in terms of the wisdom from hearing and wisdom from contemplation, but by direct realization. This is the shamatha and vipassana with infinite focus. So we have three aspects of infinity when you are realized. You can use infinite meanings, infinite the words, and you can also use the infinite wisdom connected with the skillful means of explaining the Dharma. So we will see later, or it is explained very well here, and also in Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra, when you have what he calls here ultimate wisdom, then you can rely on words, you can rely on scriptures, but also you don't need to rely on words, you don't need to rely on scriptures. This is the freedom of the realized man. He can rely on scriptures. He also must not necessarily rely on scriptures. He relies on the wisdom from hearing and the wisdom from contemplation, but he does not rely also wisdom from hearing, wisdom from contemplation. This gives him a great amount of freedom. So this brings us also to the Zen tradition is based mostly on this Yogācāra principles of great freedom in using the scriptures or going beyond the scriptures and using all kinds of skillful means which are unimaginable to the original tradition of Buddhism, or what we usually call as original tradition of Buddhism. So this is also different from the explanation of the Abhidharmakosha, for example. Abhidharmakosha explains, like all Buddhist traditions, in order to get realization, you have to have the wisdom from hearing, wisdom from contemplation, and wisdom from meditation. Wisdom from hearing is like swimming with the help of the device. Like the small children with a ring, they can enter the water. Then the wisdom from contemplation is sometimes using the device and sometimes just swimming. And again, when the swimming becomes difficult, again using the device. Like the adolescent learn swimming. Then the wisdom from meditation is discarding the device. But still using the words, because it is you always rely on the agamas in explaining. But here, you don't need to rely on the agamas. You can use the wisdom from hearing and from contemplation, but you also don't use wisdom from hearing and contemplation. You rely on scriptures or you discard the scriptures. So the emphasis is on the direct realization rather than on the scriptures. But the scriptures, as we will see later, it comes, the scriptures, nevertheless, they are the Dharma. And first there has to be Dharma, then there can be the meaning. This is also clearly explained. If there is no Dharma, if there are not names, there will not be meaning. That's why the conceptual image comes first. But this conceptual image, as we have seen, can come from the in a traditional way, from the analytical meditation, but it can come also through direct contemplation of the highest reality. This is not exactly in accordance with what the Agamas describe. So that much for the question 14. We can go to the question number 15. Maitreya inquired, what attainment of shamatha and vipassana, what is attainment of shamatha and vipassana? Focused. Focused means here with the actually, what is the attainment of shamatha and vipassana? Focus on totality of teaching. That is, as we have seen, the focused on the samanya dharma lakshana. That means on the emptiness or suchness. So it means this Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, because the aim of the Bodhisattva is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, and he says, what is the actually here in the Chinese version for Bodhisattva? What is for Bodhisattva the attainment of the samanya dharma? That means of emptiness or suchness. What is the attainment of the Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi? With the shamatha and vipassana. Or what is the attainment of shamatha and vipassana? With the samanya lakshana, with the shunyata being the object. So the Buddha replied, it is attainment of 5 conditions. So, or in other words, this Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi has 5 conditions. When these 5 conditions are there, you will get the highest realization. You will find the same explanation, more or less the same, in Sutra Alankara. The first three conditions are said to be concerned with shamatha. The last two conditions are said to be concerned with vipassana. When you have these conditions, you will get the 5 fruits, which is the 5 aspects of the ultimate realization. This is very interesting, and it needs a very detailed analysis. First is the basis of crude attachments. This is the so he translates, first is a basis of crude attachments. He translates as crude attachment as the Daustulya basis, the gross basis. He translates a basis as attachments, which is all right. It is an interpretation, but it is perfectly understandable because a basis is attachment. Alaya is based on attachment. So the crude attachment, which means alaya, is melted down from moment to moment, kshana kshana, in meditation, in suvai, in meditation or in contemplation. Usually we translate suvai as contemplation, but it can be translated as meditation. So it means you are melting down the gross basis, which he translates as gross attachment, which is the base for all other attachments, is this vipaka vijnana, the resultant consciousness, which is alaya. All the other consciousnesses are alaya ja. They are born of alaya. So from the alaya, you have parinama, you have the evolution of everything that we experience as inside and outside, as the world, as the person. So this alaya is a base for all the daustulya, for all the grossness, from the subtle grossness to the very grossness. So this attachments, or this base for attachments, would be maybe a more exact translation, is melted every moment. What is the condition of melting every moment? The alaya, the base of consciousness. You have to have prashrabdhi. Prashrabdhi is the opposite of daustulyam. Daustulyam means grossness. Prashrabdhi means subtleness. When we become Buddhas, we only dwell in subtleness. The grossness is gone. because the grossness is gone, you melt the base for attachments. You melt the resultant consciousness. Call it alaya or call it the bhavanga in the Theravada tradition. They explain the same continuity of consciousness based on attachment. When we have attachment, this will continue. So it is the consciousness which, when we leave our body, which then goes wherever it is destined to go. So this explains the samadhi, shunyata samadhi. In the shunyata samadhi, in the samadhi of emptiness, you melt the base for attachment, the alaya, moment by moment. So, what will happen? This is, of course, the state of shamatha. You have the three, many kinds of the shamatha with an object. And you have the three kinds of supermundane samadhis. So many kinds of samadhis with an object, and three supermundane samadhis. The first is samadhi of shunyata. Samadhi of shunyata, or you will find in Visuddhimagga, is the meditation on the selflessness. In a Theravada tradition, selflessness of the person, of atta, is emphasized. In this tradition, it is selflessness of Dharma, of all the phenomena, which implies also the selflessness of the person, of the atta. So when you get the prashrabdhi, clarity and relaxation, when you get subtleness, pliancy, meditating on the selflessness, you enter the samadhi of emptiness, and you can, in that samadhi, moment by moment, you can melt the base of attachment, which is alaya. And so you, so to say, you move towards, as we have seen, you enter, as we have seen before, you enter the suchness. Samadhi of emptiness enters the suchness. The other samadhis explain, we will explain tomorrow. The other samadhis, Lokutara samadhis, the supermundane samadhis. Here in this tradition, this division between the mundane and supermundane is also melting away. When the base is melting away on the base of suchness, then also this division between the worldly and the ultimate reality is melting away. So when you contemplate the selflessness of all the phenomena, you melt down the base for attachment, the alaya. So you can enter into the real contemplation, meditation on suchness. The other supermundane samadhis are, the next one is animita, signless samadhi. And the third one is apranihita, the samadhi without desire. According to the tradition, the samadhi of animita is based on contemplation of, you will find in Visuddhimagga, contemplation of impermanence. And the apranihita samadhi, desireless samadhi, is based on dhyana, deep dhyana. How it works, we will learn tomorrow. That much for today. We have 10 minutes left for question and answers, and we will continue with the 15th question of Maitreya. And maybe tomorrow we will finish this part dealing with the skillful means of entering the non-dualistic meditation, and we can slowly start summarizing the objects of the non-dual meditation, which are, as we have explained already, which are Dharma and Artha. The Dharma and the meanings of Dharma. And Dharma here means names. Names, sentences, syllables, generalization, and particularization. So without the name, you don't get the meaning. So this is why we understand better. This translator translates nimitta as conceptual image. This is the reason. This is very good translation. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions from participants? You can raise your hand or you can write in chat. No questions.
No question? This is not easy to understand. So please think about it, read more, meditate more. Karuna has question. That is very good. You are a Karuna. You should be very clear. What is the question?
You are talking about melting down the base of attachment. So Buddha meant
the alaya.
So
this is not this is used more in the alaya. Basically means attachment. From the Sanskrit root li means stick actually. When the mind is sticking to the world inside and outside, then you are in samsara. When the mind does not stick, so it comes even in Dhammapada, then Arahat is Anoka. He has no abode in the world. Abode in the world is alaya. That's why alaya is also called adana. It appropriates the world. That's why you have to understand emptiness, not to appropriate the base of attachment, which is the mind sticking to the objects. You check your mind is sticking to the objects or not. That is the highest meditation. Okay? You will find some very interesting insights into the non-dualistic meditation. This is the advantage of the non-dualistic meditation. You observe directly, so attaining this pliancy, you have to attain first pliancy, relaxation, and clarity. Then you can observe how your mind sticks to the objects. Very wonderful. This is a non-dualistic meditation.
So Buddha and
When the mind does not stick to any objects, you can get into the contemplation of the mind without an object. And you can get a very deep samadhi on that. That is Dzogchen. Mahasandhi. That is also similar to meaning of Zen. The meditation, contemplation of the mind without an object, which does not clash with the mind having objects. Mind having objects and mind not having object is contemplated with the same awareness. This is what here is somehow translated with infinite awareness of ultimate wisdom. Where the eventually Mula Dhyana and the Kristalabdha Dhyana, the basic realization, the understanding after the realization melt. So you can use this awareness towards the object also without it. Very good. So you are Karuna, so you have a lot to do.
Because he has question.
Yeah, always Vipassi. Very good.
I was thinking I don't have question, but finally it come one. Thank you for class. First of all, it's a changing experience, these classes. I want to ask about the samatha on the 5 khandhas or on any cetasikas as sadhana or how we do that is understanding that the 5 khandhas are just mind. And for example,
you don't need to understand that. That is a non-dualistic meditation. Don't get confusion. That is non-dualistic meditation. You can understand on the 5, you can meditate on the 5 skandhas and in a dualistic way, no harm. If you want to become an arahant, okay, no problem.
I'm more interested in the non-dualistic actually. I'm just studying the Theravada because the basis, but my family is not Theravada, this is quite clear. But my question is, for example, how I attain samatha on Vedana?
Samatha on Vedana?
Yes.
If the Vedana does not change, then the mind does not change. The worldly mind is based on the Vedana. Okay?
Okay. So in the same way, all the namas, like if I want to attain samatha on sati, I need a sati that don't change for that, right?
Yes, it is also first there has to be a conceptual image of sati, then you can meditate on sati.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let us. Eta vata chame sambhatam punya sampatam sabbe deva anumodantu sabha sampati siddhi. Eta vata chame sambhatam punya sampatam sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabha sampati siddhi. Eta vata chame sambhatam sabbe tatta tantu sabha sampati siddhi. Aka satta chabumata eva naga mahidika punyanta anumoditva chiramarakantu lokasasa. Aka satta chabumata eva naga mahidika punyanta anumoditva chiramarakantu desana. Aka satta chabumata eva naga mahidika punyanta anumoditva chiramarakantu tumam. Devo vasatu kale Tasa sampati hoti. So bhavatula loko raja bhavatu dhammiko. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.